A very good evening to all of you. I hope it's a pleasant time and a good evening for most of the Indian viewers as well as some of our global viewers as well and participants. Good afternoon and good morning to most of them. Thank you for making time to attend this presentation, which is very critical in the sense that today we have no structured tool usage for the enterprise architecture per se, though enterprise architecture perceives a lot of areas both in terms of business and IT and as well as governance and monitoring. Today, I myself, Vinu Jade, I work for ISA as ambassador for the global chapter and also represent India, and also have a lot of consulting in terms of information system strategy advisory and banking, telecom, transportation and logistics, to name a few. I need to acknowledge today's presentation because my partner, Reed Taneja, who was to share this presentation with me from Mega, and a couple of people from Gartner who have helped me in terms of preparing this particular slide may not be available due to certain constraints. So I acknowledge their contribution before I start this. This particular webinar is recorded and will be made available to most of you who have participated, who are also wish to participate but have not been able to view from the ISA website with the links that we will provide. Thank you very much once again. And today's focus will be in terms of looking at the EA tools. What do they actually provide you with features? What are their high-level requisites as of today? And then look at, reaffirm our position as enterprise architects and architects all over as to what is it about. Look how the business and IT work out their strategy. Finalizing some of the requisite features of an EA suite that we should work on. Look at some of the challenges that the tools focus available in the market. And lastly, let us look at some recommendations from Gartner and others, looking at their strengths and use of tools. But first to look at it, we should discuss what are EA tools, what are their features, why do you need a tool at all, and what kind of high-level requisites that you perceive that these EA tools need. The EA tools, if you are using it effectively, meet actually the challenges facing the business. It's not an IT per se kind of an approach. An EA tool must be looking at integrating information decisions for challenges facing the business. And today, the EA tool market is a little bit fragmented. They may have a depth in terms of application portfolio management, they derive some of the analysis, but may have little or no features in terms of process management or modeling or vice versa. So that we look at it as a requirement as of today. We will further go into this webinar wherein we look at the requisites. But we feel overall a kind of feeling that they are fragmented and people do not understand very easily, and it takes a lot of training and effort to use them to their necessities. Of course, they are all software applications, and they are to be used by parties like enterprise architects, solution architects, or even technology architects, modelers, process modelers, and as well as view some of the analysis and reports to stakeholders, and EA strategy driving a planning through execution. So it is right from strategic decision making to the implementation governance. So we need to have analysis capabilities, business, information and technology solutions, and this is actually a need, a necessity that we perceive that is important for us. So what does EA tools do feature today? They normally capture information, they structure them, they analyze them and present, or do they facilitate implementation of a business strategy? I think the second bullet is a little bit challenging in terms of the available tools today. Definitely, most of us who have been working over a decade or so have felt we have used of a PowerPoint presentation, analysis, a Word document to present about the strategy. But does that have the integration with the data that is available organization? Is it time consuming? What is of use and integration of? So it's to facilitate a business strategy to be directly implemented and ensure that it is governed and monitored. Whatever we are talking, EA tools must ensure to be presented to a variety of stakeholders for transition planning or for future state architectures. It might be architecture, it might be technology architecture. So it can, when we say architecture, it is a viewpoint as viewed from a business or from technology or from solutions. So we need to have these features to enable business challenge, and that we have the strategy for the organization in terms of whatever they are going through at this point of time or futuristic, and to plan that change and transition in the technology enablement or support or even competitive edge through technology in tech and retail. So at a minimum, EA tools must integrate with project and portfolio. Obviously, since we are executing a lineup of those projects, to meet the business requirements, and it meets the business and strategy. So that's exactly what is the EA tools as a feature. Now let's look at a high-level requisite based out of these whatever we have spoken so far in terms of what a EA must have. It must have a repository which will support the different stakeholders. It should also support some kind of business direction mission. It's not always technology or IT users that will be using the EA tool. It could be that business as well. It should have requested modalities, viewpoints of information, knowledge, and most definitely capability which will provide us a present versus a futuristic gap. What will be that if I change only my customer relationship management tools? A scenario where if global, how will my application and a system working, in terms of standardization of technology platform, ability to perform, and so on and so forth. So that's on one of the aspects which is a must, and the other things which we always wish for, which we aim to have, which we always had from, let us say, Microsoft PowerPoint, or with additional capabilities of a software configuration manager or a TOGAF framework for a standard being should be adopted as our tools that we use. It should be very flexible. That's a very high level. So to summarize, we must have ideally a business focus, an IT operational or strategic necessity through repository, modeling, and decision analysis. And lastly, but not the least, some of the presentation capabilities, interactive to tell what is exactly you mean by a point of view to a business coming from a technology side or a vice versa, looking at certain security capabilities that you need to have for a set of architecture of software or configuring them in situational context that arise multiple environments. For example, geography-wide distribution of your packages, and may have different environment where you figure differently. So where do you store them? How do you actually manage them? So these are some of the niche users that we expect from the framework standards that it serves multiple frameworks. It should adopt the technology standard, multiple business practices. Is very tough in terms of usability, which is in most of the tools today see in the EA market as tools. Intuitive, flexible, and modular. The moment you mention some tool name today, go into that, oh my god, I need to learn this. How long will I take it? Will I really change things? Is it adoptable? Is it to actually take the requirements and so on and so forth? So all usability is a big primary criteria that EA tools must have as a feature. So we discussed so far about the EA tools, what do they feature on a very high level. We also know, in terms of enterprise architecture is more about change and transformation. You don't need an architect if you don't have a change in your organization. That's my point of view. Unless you have change, you need an architect because the change necessitates transformation from scenario to a true scenario. What will be the environment that will be met, capabilities that need to be, and that will be actually architected. So let's look at that. In terms of what the enterprise architects do in a transformation, bringing value and drive for a change, an integrated tool is a necessity. It is adds to the high-level requirements of an enterprise architect tool. We always have a vision as an organization. For example, let's say the organization X needs in-class customer experience. That's the aspiration. So based on the vision with certain goals, for example, let's have one IT, okay, and let it have a new customer class, a new business model, collaborate with them, and more communication, compliance to statutory obligation and governance, today banking and fraternity of customer, and often which all CIO stop. So these are some of the goals that drive the transformation. Decide about this and you strategize how to achieve it. It's a best-in-class, consistent customer experience. Now that needs a transformation strategy across your application, exposed to the customer, or it is not in the operations. All this actually drive you to come out with a roadmap for a transformation which will meet this capability for the business. So it's all capability-driven exercise. And once you are on the roadmap, implementing such programs, transformation, you need to monitor ground, and once executed, once implemented, see how well they are meeting the enterprise value that we spoke of. That is the class customer experience. Really bring a value, a benefit. That's very important. So all along, I will be showing that each process-centric, service-oriented, and capability-driven. So today we are focusing in terms of the tool to enable certain processes to be delivered as services, and they are oriented towards the capability of the organization, which is having as a business area. So that is where we need enterprise architect tools to help. I hope I'm making some communication here. In terms of the varied scenarios, it might be called a health check as to where these organizations are. But if you look at the previous slide and say, I want to strategize visionary to meet a specific capability to address a customer, best-in-class customer experience. Now, where am I as an organization? Am I frozen in the past? Very competitive? Oh, that's useful. I have to be there because it's quite competitive. It's under IT spending is a control, so there's very less requirement for agility. Or am I leading? Then I don't need a seriously very good enterprise architect because all the works have been done. It's only governance and monitoring. So it's very important when we look at it that we are using architecture tools and doing those works. If it is chosen in the past or in absence or to some extent we need to put more effort, whereas in leading, staying and then ensure that the support is given the value originated. However, when such an organization which is leading good business competition goes to a maybe, as we have seen in the economy, where number one company in the world go down the line, they need some kind of check, transforming and meeting the next objective. So obviously there is change, there is a need for price with a good tool to come by and support the organization. So these are all I'm trying to sum up in terms of what kind of enterprise architecture requisites the tool's features. So if we spoke about what EA is, what necessitates the tool. We discussed about a high level what the features that the enterprise architecture tools must have. Today let's look at in the third point what is important and how do I understand it, how does IT meet it, and what are their strategy. So that's the next one, which is bringing to understand a person to analogize what a business is. In many scenarios, if you have seen, we always have a customer obviously needing a product or a product trying to be appeased into a customer. So it's customer products, that's the scenario in all industries. It might be services, but so they are all more definitely a customer meeting product. Look at the theme of us. It's right of you, and you want to touch. You need to use the customer and the product. Both of them have to come together. For that, you need to use the fulcrum, which is what we are talking about, and the control points will change and economic control. So financial supply chain and economic market scenarios will actually reduce, if you are ideal, the supply and demand mismatch, and obviously if you can do that, the customer needs the product, but not by magic. Obviously you have the red and the blue that I have depicted, which will help in achieving. While technology focus enable and support will lower the business process effective risks. Business focus will improve mind definitions, regulatory and governance failures, and governance effectiveness, reducing the gap on the reducing the supply and demand mismatch. Obviously, we need to have a management focus to meet the supply and demand, which is of paramount importance when enterprise already focus on. So if you look at it, looking further in terms of a customer meeting a product, we have a scenario where the technology focus will improve the business process effectiveness index, and the business focus will actually make the customer map the product with its governance effectiveness, domain modeling effectiveness, and value-based market products. If you go back and see in the earlier slide that I have with the open scissor and not a cut scissor, which will come info to you in a few seconds because my system is actually going a little bit slow. Okay, so here we are. The customer is driven by the economic market demand, whereas the products are actually dependent on your internal financial or material supply chains. So that's a lever that is directly through your architecture strategy. If you want to improve your products, you must have certain supply chain effectiveness, change of dealers, change the way you get the products actually portfolio. And on the other side of it, the lever with the customer, the eccentricities, which we call it agility of the customer, is actually ours. Ours is because we buy mobiles, we are customers in the industry, domain and process talking of, have a lot of bearing in terms of how the economy drives us. We have affordability, we have ability to purchase, we want the banks. All customers are driven by the market. And so it is very important that to reduce the supply-demand mismatch and cut the governance gap, make sure the customer match the products, we have a business focus as well as a technology focus. They go hand in hand. It's not that technology is nothing and you just go blindly and support business. It's not so. Earlier it was a supportive technology. Later it became technology enabled. And today we are looking at technology creating no more business competitiveness or ability to do a new kind of business just because of the availability of certain technology. So it's gone a little bit wider in terms of scope of how technology helps business. Now the third point that I want to tell here, all these points that I'm trying to say is these tools are essential to help us do these things, help us understand what we spoke as domain modeling, or model a customer, understand customer context, what kind of products are essential to meet their needs, how will the products be met by your supply chain, how will the market eccentricities be mapped, or it's a risk for a particular product export, so on and so forth. So the last point here is alliance and IT. So we do have 4 pillars here. Obviously, the top 2, business strategy and IT strategy, must go hand in hand. In terms of the exposure, they might be external or internal. In the competitive advantage separate, we have architecture which supports a business strategy and an architecture which supports supporting IT strategy. That's on the standard side. So there are a couple of transformation scenarios. The strategy execution, you have a specific business strategy, you would like to align IT strategy and build an IT on the strategy execution. If you want to transform your IT, it goes 1, 3, and 4, which is business strategy, and then you align a software for it and map your IT architect for it. And similarly, if looking at IT data strategy as an enabler, you have a severe competitive potential in terms of business architecture driving your business and evidently the IT strategy. The last but not the least is more the CIOs what normally enable themselves to do is you have a business architecture and they try to make sure that the IT architecture is in conjunction with it and derive an IT strategy out of it. So 3-4-2 service level alignment to business. Again, there are different role play management in each of these scenarios. And all perspectives are defining an IT strategy to manage it, have understood must meet. So obviously the tools that we are speaking of today must help us achieve these things. Now let's get into requisites of an enterprise architecture. An ideal situation where we understood so far what an EA tool must do, high-level requisites. Then we looked at what is enterprise architecture. We looked at what business wants and what IT is capable of and what strategy they have. Let's look at requisites of an EA speech, which should be, in terms of deriving from whatever we have learned so far. We learned that there is a supply demand, number one. Number two is that there is a business to IT alignment, and there is a necessity for strategic execution of the same, be it transformation or not, be it based domain-specific change. It might be only to do with customer, or it can be only to do with products, or it can be both, or it can be a specific exercise to improve the supply chain. If you're looking at it, there are three fundamental challenges that a tool must address. The business-centric challenges, wherein we need its help in creating an approach business strategy model, helping in agile IT, and bring value through strategy planning. It also helps us in supply alignment. It helps us in agile customer experience, because this particular tool will help us do domain modeling. Now these are business-centric. Now if we look at IT and data-centric challenges, the technology strategy itself, it's not just that IT is inclusive in this. It's not always conclusive, because information technology is one of the technologies that the business will definitely make use of. So it will help consumer or the customer in the product. Like I mentioned earlier in the scissors, how the customer meet the products, we must those IT challenges met, in terms of how do we manage a tool to collect all the data, show them, analyze, get a variant to it in terms of can be transformed. Last but not the least, which has been forgotten altogether in the last couple of years, was governance and compliance, which has come into the forefront. If there is a risk or a governance lack or a compliance not met, you need a change in the organization. The enterprise architects running into the organization help you to achieve it. So what the enterprise architecture boundary was earlier, it has got a little wider and say the scenarios happen while if we implement a specific strategy and fails, we come down, there is a risk, there is no compliance to the specific needs. We change our technology to support business. So it has become a part and parcel, a third but the most important part of enterprise architecture tool, so that there is an operational strategy for whatever we conceived, designed, implemented to business IT-centric challenges through a governance and risk capability. So let's just think, or should we adopt enterprise architecture tools? Do we, or with whatever we have today? Obviously, the requisites of an EA suite is more today in terms of what IT and data needs. The centricity is more on IT and data. Very little in terms of the business centricity, and there are other tools which are managing the governance, risk and compliance, which are not very well integrated with the rest of the scenario. So if you are going and looking at an overall requisite for a EA tool to meet, this is what I suggest and recommend. It must be having all the 3 times, which will help us continually manage change, and help in transformation. So let's just overview the EA rule requisites in a more structured fashion. Obviously, I feel there should be an enterprise repository. I start on January 1st, 2014 or 15. From then, at that point of time, I push in as many important components, models, processes into my repository as possible so that I can reuse them. And then proceed to create new ones if essential for the change. So that's the requirement for an enterprise repository. And we talked about business and its operation. We must provide solutions for business leaders. They must be able to analyze, manage, and transform their operating model. In terms of strategic objectives of the company, they are being questioned. Their key performance is nothing but mapping their strategic objectives with what they are doing today. Be the customer relationship manager or a back-end operating business person looking at mapping certain customer accounts. Similarly, IT and data needs help in terms of solutions to analyze, manage, and transform their assets. The assets are what we are speaking in terms of whether it is a CRM application or a supply chain management application, or it can be a simple user interface, internet applications which are helping users to access your back-end operations. But they all must support business models. They contribute to business performance, navigate in transformation, specific cases, I would say. So business operations and IT must be able to help. Binding on them is of course the GRC. They are leaders of assurance functions. They are looking at how the business is at risk, how the operations of IT is in compliance or not, is it in control. If I have a technologically obsolete application, what is the risk that I expose to my customers? It's a simple question. An internal audit which consistently manage the exposure of the organizations need that both from business and IT function. So EA2 most definitely must have these four different aspects. Enterprise repository of either governance, business operations, IT and data, and specifications which are being managed. So in another perspective, if you look at what I spoke about earlier, business architecture and then the IT architecture, IT data will be looking at more of portfolio management and how the enterprise architecture helps them, while business operations will be looking at how you can operationally ground a specific business architecture which is aiding them in a strategy. Now that's the organization perception, and on the other side of it, each one of them, both business and IT, will go through a design, analyze, assess, improve, and transform loop. To govern all of that, we have the internal audit, we have enterprise risk, and compliance management. So that comes as an overall governing body. But the actual meat of it, the actual work is being done at the business architecture, operational, and IT portfolio management levels. So the EA suite must have abilities, definitely, to do minimum capability in these areas. Only then can we have the CXOs govern with a specific business strategy and execution, and being able to identify enterprise architects with their tools as capable to help them in business strategy and execution. Only can we go there and say, look, you have a dashboard which says how much of risk are you having with specific to a certain domain area, which is revenue bearing for you. For example, prepaid customers in telecom or prepaid customers. Who is more important for telecom? Tell me today. There has been instances where telecom companies have gotten about bids and only prepaid customers new product bundlings. Then they realize, oh my God, we have a consistent revenue coming from a different customer segment. What do we do there? Improve the product portfolio, give the upgrades. So the flexibility of prepaid meant it also to postpaid. The maturity of the organization improved because your domain modeling changed. That's a specific example. I'm not saying going more deep into it because there are solutions. There are more of capabilities that need. So one approach to key challenges is definitely the business, which is definitely the execution of business strategy, then looking at a transformation of operating model, and they also have to look at aligning their partnership with IT, and most importantly, they have to have a capability using this tool to develop business set of business capabilities that are needed for strategic imperatives that are needed for revenue bearing or profitability of the organization or competitive. The other part is in terms of IT and data, the more closer to us in terms of IT. We speak about digital transformation, we say agility, we say we want to manage the application portfolios better and mitigate the risks that we have. We have to have a solution blueprint, for example, for customer relationship management or even for digital transformation. So the IT needs the EA tool to effectively help in these aspects. And overall, now risk and compliance comes into figure with certain lines of forces, it should be integrated and consistent, balanced with performance for compliance. Why I'm mentioning here that single integrated tool is an essentiality for enterprise architecture is because just let's take off this particular slide flow. Look at a scenario where you enter into an organization which might be quite true, is having 30% profitability or more and it's top rank. However, they are not able to keep the same customers. The customers are moving away. You are getting effectively new, but you could have done much more by holding on to your existing customers. The growth would have been tremendous. Now, if you are looking at such a study to customers, while this present strategy of getting new customers well, obviously there is something wrong with exposure of a product, different period of time with the customer, or exposure of your service to the customer is not there. In process to reach the customer. Now, how do you do that? Where do you start as an architect? Do you go to the business, or do you go and talk to the IT application owner, or will you look at the data? That is very important. Now, unless you have those information available in a tool, you are not able to assess. So the first problem any of the IT companies in the world today that do in an organization is, oh well, I need to do analysis and assessment for 3 months with 10 of my team. They do, they collect the data, they put it, God knows that. Now, IT company does that over a period of time, these collected data are not stored in a single registry of no use for future or for person. Now, if you have a tool capable of storing such information, you don't need very often consultants or analysis guys to come in, spend 3 months with your team, spending all your time business angle and IT angle assessing it. It reduces the overall expense, improves the way that organization is growing. That's where I'm coming from. An enhanced architecture tool must have integration capability to store the most necessary information for what we spend. It will reduce the multitude of consultants and architects who come in at different time, confuse the overall business vision as to what they have. So that's one approach to key challenges. The other one, of course, is in terms of the challenges the tool focus themselves today in the market. So having so far gone through 4 of the topics, which is we have somewhat come to a point where we know what the EA tools should do for us, at least meet our expectations. But what challenges do they have? Even if you perceive and bring in an enterprise architecture tool today, the most best in the market, what will be the challenges that it will focus, eliminate? Let's look at it. Again, it is segregated based on business and operation centricity, IT and data, and governance and compliance. So let's take it one by one. I won't elaborate much because of lack of time. However, these slides will be available for you to go through at leisure whenever you want. But most of these challenges, or in terms of what you have as an inventory, you evaluate it towards a scenario requirement, a transformation requirement for road mapping. You look at the challenges from a perception of an architect doing a change, bringing the old, changing it and making it new. So that's the focus. So if you're looking at business centricity changes, execution of business strategy is very important. Transformation of operating model is a necessity. We need help in terms of making the business model capabilities much better. We have to analyze and improve the business processes if we have to meet the new strategic objectives. So for business operation and challenges, these are the paramount requirements. A little bit elaboration on it. We have scenarios of multiple businesses, sophisticated strategy, a very complex organization as well. We need strategic planning. We need execution of that strategic planning. That's of importance through the tool. In governance, we find it is a very regulated environment, like, let us say, in terms of banking. Obviously, it is very much regulated. There's an impact if there's a non-compliance. We have to ensure there's a compliance to the best business practices. Obviously, we need to risk and exposure liberation. The other part is in terms of evaluation of business model capabilities, which we speak very little about as an IT guy or an IT person. There's always a changing business environment, and the business model should be very agile and obviously will be complex, which will actually show you how you can transform from a geography. Let's just take a typical example. My business model was to meet Indian customers. Tomorrow, accommodating South Korea. Will my business model change or not? If you want to succeed with the same Indian business model, there are certain loopholes. Obviously, for that you may need a strict business model. Retaining your Indian customers, you are going to meet your South Korean requirements. Isn't it a challenge? So you need to be agile to model how a customer is perceived or a product position is perceived, service is perceived with KPIs, with a specific business plan your business and IT for driving these capabilities. Obviously, once you have a business model, comes into an operating model, you need to have standardization, you need to have continuous analysis and all. I'm not saying that all of this are essential for a tool is to be called as enterprise architecture tool. No. It should be able to provide support, and in most of the critical core processes be able to enable information analysis, storage and modeling. Many people have spoken about business processes, BPM tools being used in enterprise architecture, especially some of the top ranking tools which are basically sold by IBM or SAP or Oracle are capable of doing business process improvements. But what amount of data you need to push in for getting a process alignment and ensuring that the process aligned or directly executed as a service or a software, that is more in the context of transformation. That context of the transformation is brought about by the knowledge of the enterprise architecture tool, which has in its repository the present challenges, the portfolio, how it is being managed, what was the problem with specific processes, which will be a continuing improvable process if you adopt that enterprise architecture tool over and above WSDL or BPM and compliant BPM tool. I'm not talking about depth of the process, I'm talking about the width of accommodation, process definition, enterprise architecture. Obviously, with that, alignment of this and IT to grow in agility and making assets more with IT and IT investment process. And that's how you meet your business requirement. And this is very important, these last 3 slides that I showed you, because today the perception in the market is what we are going to speak in the next 3 slides, which we all know much better if you are a part and parcel of IT. Not to undermine them, IT does a lot of good things, but it doesn't actually meet hand in hand with the specific business strategy today. IT does manage its portfolio, looks at mitigating its exposure, looks at portfolio management, tries to be agile as possible to meet the business, and also speaks about things which are competitive in the digital transformation. Now, to achieve along with business, we need a lot of strategic importance in role making as an IT driving business. So in the digital transformation, business is fully depending upon technology for the operating model to transform itself, and ensuring the IT capability helps its existing organization to achieve the business model required for digital transformation. Similarly, point number 2, alignment and agility of IT landscape, multiple assets, we have a lot of interfaces, we have dependencies, we have multiple vendors supplying, we do not know what licensing we need to control. Now, unless we are able to provide map an application or a domain level value given by a particular set, you cannot rational IT landscape. Obviously, you need a good management of application portfolio for that, and also mitigation of IT risk and exposure. I will not go in depth into it because most of you might be aware of this particular aspect. Now, coming into the governance and risk, as I said earlier, enterprise risk management, internal audit, compliance management is a very essential thing for sustaining what we have achieved through a transformation and ensuring that we don't very often, very often keep changing our technology support to meet the business objectives. So there should be consistent practices collaboration between assurance functions. We should include multiple business lines, facilitate mapping, assessment and control at a very broad level. This is not a depth the enterprise architecture tool will look at. It will go to each of the business line and look at very high level width-wise mapping, assessment and control. Similarly, compliance and internal audit. A regulated environment with regulation and policies, how do you implement standard practices? Practice may change based on economy, based on market expectations, based on regulatory concern. How do you automate such activities and monitor, optimize and improve your capabilities? So these are some of the things that are very essential for an enterprise architecture tool to help. I know I'm running out of time, but since I started 10 minutes later, I request you to hang on to my last 10 minutes in terms of recommendations and strength and weakness of tool. I think it will be very interesting for you because I'm looking at Gartner's recommendations which has come in the last couple of weeks in terms of the use of tools for assessment and transformation as well. So just to start off, we spoke about a tool which can easily deploy a best practice in terms of portfolio management of processes, take advantage of out-of-the-box reports and dashboards, help in technology standardization, achieve cost analysis, and arrive at a transformation roadmap. So this is the length and width of an enterprise architecture tool, which is essential in the market and for the organizations today that we are speaking of. Now, what Gartner recommends is something that is very high-level strategy. It states, EA approach should start and end with a focus on delivering recommendations to business and IT leaders for their outcomes, ensuring that they go in the right direction with no disruptions. There are a lot of corresponding documents that you can actually look out in the Gartner, which will help you understand this statement, which is very good. On the other side, for business, strategy and operations, outcomes through a developing EA with its guidance and actions, with enterprise architects empower. That's some things that I felt myself working, was that empowering was not there to drive enterprise change and deliver high impact. So Gartner recognizes the need and the industry perceive, but it's up to us practicing architects to ensure with the right tool to go and do the work, we will be having a better world. The latest Magic Quadrant puts Mega on the top. I've taken a lot of help in terms of getting those features today for your benefits, as to know what an ideal or most real enterprise architecture tool we have today in the market. Mega has most of it at varying depths of capability, what we spoke of today, as well as Software AG and Trox. But what is this? This particular Gartner report was very good in the, but again, their evaluation more on a rather than what we came today in terms of requisites of an EA tool. The EA has to do. It was more in terms of all these things part of innovation and base necessity, but they also looked at things like sales, availability, the geography, their skills and stuff like that. If you're looking at it, not exactly with the requisite we spoke of in the last work, but very much closer with Mega, Software AG and Trox come top. We use ID So what I have done is the next couple of slides for our just summarize some of the different benefits of these four vendors we are very much aware of. Mega has a continuity in terms of being able to strategize for the business and the last portion of it, ground them. So they have the enterprise architecture suite, they have the application portfolio management suite, and they also have the governance and risk compliance. And very user intuitive on a HOPEX platform, and that's what Mega completely integrates the industry factors. And today, for the past 3 years, have maintained the best tool in the market as per Gartner. There are certain costs. It might be overbinding you to use the tool if it is small and medium organizations where you have such requirements as it is widely perceived to be. Don't mark if you just an operational architecture tool. But if your strategy in your business is to grow big, adopt Mega today, because it will help you achieve vision much better. The second in line is Software AG, as per Gartner, has come from a process angle and has got very high ability in terms of process modeling and domain modeling in the EA context, management of service products, has a very intuitive UI, and interoperability with ARIS, which is very popular in most of our architects group. Question is in terms of the ease of use. Can be challenging without assistance of companies' connectivities. So you need to ascertain. It does very good, but it's special proprietary help. Trox, though, you might be very aware, drives everything through capability. We spoke of capability, and it looks at capability, and it looks at integrating with project portfolio management and other vendors who are working on modeling on the domains. So it is it is more on the data side of it rather than the process side of it. Capability to design systems based on data centricity, based on integration with other portfolios. Trox has got its ability to do. And last but not the least, IBM, hugely popular. We have all worked on Rational for a very long period, has been struggling to improve in terms of data transitioning from one stage to the other. However, it is making a mark in the market and has grown quite aggressively in the last few years. So having said that, enterprise architecture tools are basically an architect's right and left hand. It also depends on what ability you have, what abilities that you want to grow, and to ensure that there is a definitive contribution for the business value looking at the tool usage. It's fantastic to have spent a lot of time with you guys. Thanks for your time with me. You can feel free to send me email or a communication through the email ID that I have just shared with you. It's vjere@isaac.home.org. I'm also active in LinkedIn as Vinu. I do post some of the what I feel I should share with most of the practicing architects today. Please feel free to go through it, and it's been an excellent pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much. Have a very nice day.